So I'm gonna be, this is gonna be quite a fast talk. I unfortunately lost some time in the whole business with the slides. But also, I've decided to kind of shake things up a bit, and I'm going to combine the talk on memes, which is about narratives, with some more practical discussion on DarkFi, because yesterday we had some people asking us, you know, what is DarkFi? So I want to kind of address those questions. So the basic kind of mimetic shift that that I mentioned while we're on this panel is you know, moving away from this kind of reactive positioning that a lot of the legacy of the cypherpunk movement has inherited, and moving towards a more affirmative conception of anonymity and freedom. So the basic metaphor that we're using in our memetics is, or one of them at least, is this notion of a forest. And I mentioned that the forest is a fertile space, you know, which allows for the regeneration of society outside of the surveillance apparatus, which is about control. It's like predicated on control. So that's one of the metaphors that we use. You know, it comes from a critique of cypherpunk, and you know, not just a critique, but building on that like very important and you know, heroic legacy, but recognizing that cypherpunk contains some mimetic tendencies that have kind of driven it in a trap towards this like reactive framing. So just like to give an example, here's our cues from a cypherpunk manifesto, which is very cool text, where he says, "We, the cypherpunks, are dedicated to building anonymous systems. We are defending our privacy with cryptography, with anonymous mail forwarding systems, with digital signatures, and with electronic money." So it's a very cool text, but again, the emphasis is on, you know, defense and defending of privacy. So I think this is kind of put us on the back foot in a way, where cypherpunk has found itself in a position where it's simultaneously both this kind of niche project, but also it's trying to appeal to the masses, but really it's achieved neither things perfectly. And so, you know, we're very interested in stepping outside of this reactive framing and moving away from some of the mimetic traps that have been laid for us. Lunarpunk then, like the shift is, you know, towards this more affirmative mode. Instead of we are defending our privacy, we are asserting our freedom. So, you know, Lunarpunk, it's a new meme. It tries to draw on the mimetic legacies of both cypherpunk and, you know, more recently solarpunk, but it corrects these tendencies, some of which that I've addressed, that have put us in this awkward position where, on the one hand, we have this conflation of privacy with criminality by the surveillance state. So that's like a narrative that's been used to increasingly reduce privacy, and we found ourselves in a way unable to counter that argument. You know, Monero, for example, it counters it by just saying, yes, you know, like actually we are supporting criminals, you know. That's like the Monero tactic, but that's still like, it rests within that reactive framing. Zcash, it does the opposite approach, where it says, you know, no, like privacy is not criminal, privacy is normal, day to day, but neither of these tactics are working, and we're actually getting the worst of both worlds. This is the critique that Lunarpunk is trying to build on and to propose like an alternative. So solarpunk is kind of like a cousin or a sister, perhaps, of Lunarpunk. Solarpunk, it's similar to Lunarpunk in that it also has this affirmative position of wanting to create new worlds and stepping outside the reactive and negative mind space, you know, of, in Solarpunk's case, of cyberpunk. So that's like the critique that it's making, is cyberpunk never managed to properly escape the dystopia that it identifies, because because it's always envisioning these like sad outcomes, whereas solarpunk, it tries to remain optimistic. It says, let's try to have like productive science fiction where we actually imagine, you know, what are the best outcomes rather than the worst. So that's like solarpunk. Lunarpunk builds on that, but it also has a critique of solarpunk in that a lot of the solarpunk in how it's been applied to crypto is like a defense of transparency. So it's like, we're going to have a great optimistic future, but we're also going to reveal everything on chain, and which is also creating a dystopia. So it kind of has its own mimetic weaknesses. So that's kind of where Lunarpunk comes from. But it's not, it shouldn't be understood as like an anti-solarpunk or an anti-cypherpunk, but rather a synthesis which combines both aspects of cypherpunk and solarpunk, and tries to basically complete the meme. This is like some kind of schemas where we see the different characteristics of these memes. Like we've got Lunarpunk, which promotes utopian anonymity, like whereas solarpunk is more toward the utopian transparency. We characterize cypherpunk as a dystopian kind of privacy future, cyberpunk as a dystopian surveillance future. These are like, you know, they're not complete, but, you know, it's to give you a rough idea of how we're framing the DarkFi's memetics. Then, you know, on the other side, like Lunarpunk promotes utopian non-states. So that means like new societies outside the logic of state-based civilization and, you know, coercion, rather than the neo-states proposed by other things. This is on the level of vibes, you know, like we've got energies. Lunarpunk, it's got an affirmative vibe. Cypherpunk is more negative. Solarpunk is affirmative, but it combines that with transparency. And, you know, in Lunarpunk in general, and in DarkFi specifically, we tend to talk about anonymity rather than privacy. I think this is like, this is again in an effort to step away from the reactive messaging of cypherpunk. So that was a really quick version of the memes talk. If you want a broader discussion, I'm hoping to publish like the full kind of analysis soon. But as I'm on short time, I'm now going to turn to DarkFi on the kind of practical level. So, you know, we're in L1 for anonymous engineering. The basic idea is to provide tooling for developers to create anonymous applications. So we're a custom environment that's been built to achieve that, and we combine different techniques. So the current version of DarkFi is very much in zero knowledge, relies on that heavily, but we plan to extend our toolkit with different techniques such as MPC, fully homomorphic encryption, so that you have this extensible toolkit that you can wield to create these featureful applications. So the current status is we're on testnet. It's our first testnet. On this version of the testnet, we have running an anonymous proof of stake called Ouroboros Crypsinus, which is a kind of proof of stake where the block leaders are anonymous, so they're not like publicly revealed on chain. So you don't have the same DDoS risk as other proof of stake chains. However, the next, oh, actually, I'll talk about it in a sec. I'll talk about the next testnet. We combine this blockchain with a general purpose smart contract architecture, which allows us to create anonymous applications. In particular, you know, we have the DAO app I mentioned on the panel, on-chain programmable encrypted treasuries. We have anon OTC, that's basically swaps, multi-asset swaps, transactions, any asset, anonymous staking, and the IRC communication stack, which is encrypted as well, and also peer-to-peer. So, you know, I'll kind of quickly discuss the smart contract architecture. I think I'm possibly over time. This timer is stuck, so I don't know. I'm just going for it. But so on the DarkFi network, and there's, you know, a full node is doing these two jobs. It's both proving and verifying transactions. So the prover is the one that's creating the transaction and like filling it with their anonymized data. The verifier then, it's continuously scanning until it receives updates on the network. And then when it receives a transaction, it verifies the crypto is correct and all of the signatures inside the transaction. And then it does a state transition, brings the chain to the next state. I mentioned we have, like, DarkFi is programmable and extensible. The way that the basic kind of mechanism for that is that transactions contain multiple function call data. So we can basically chain this call data inside an encrypted, what we call a bulla, which is like an encrypted statement inside of a transaction. And that call data is basically just arbitrary information defined by the smart contracts, so it differs per application. So it can contain ZK proofs, signatures, commitments, etc. This is like the various different components of our smart contract architecture. We've got the assembly, the ZK assembly, and the ZK VM. So that's where we create the ZK proofs, and it compiles down to Halo 2. So that's kind of its like modular own environment for like creating those anonymous proofs. And then separately, we have a WASM runtime where we actually do the smart contract logic, and that's written in Rust. And those Rust contracts basically import the outputs of the ZK VM, and they operate then on WASM. Then we have this crypto SDK, which has all these different techniques that developers can wield: signatures, elliptic curves, commitment scheme, and we want to continuously expand the features of this SDK as well. I mentioned that we have the IRC and that we put a big emphasis on anonymous communication as well. Parzid mentioned on the panel that most of the projects are using Discord, so we're completely reluctant to do that. We have our own peer-to-peer anonymous chat, and all of this runs on the peer-to-peer network, which is built in a way that's highly modular. So it's easy for us to add other transports. So we have NIM and Tor support and TLS already working now on testnet. Finally then, in terms of next steps, we're now focusing on smoothing everything out. It doesn't say this super clearly, but we're actually building a new testnet right now, which I mentioned we're doing an Ouroboros Crypsinus proof of stake, but as you guys know from Amir's presentation yesterday, there's also going to be a proof of work phase. So for the first 2 years of DarkFi mainnet, we will use a random X CPU mining algorithm as a distribution method. So the current testnet that we're building is random X proof of work. And so the next step is basically we're going to release this new testnet with the proof of work. We're auditing all of the different aspects of the code base, and once that's had sufficient testing, we're going to roll out the mainnet hopefully sometime early next year. So that's it for me. If you want more information, please go to our website. That's our Twitter, and check out our GitHub as well. Every Monday at 4 p.m. Central European Time, we do a dev chat on the IRC. So, if you want to learn more about the project, that's definitely the best place to do so. Thanks.
Thank you.